Well, Momi, thank you so much for making time to join me today to have a compelling discussion. What I feel is a compelling discussion.
Okay,
Yes, I've been following your work both on IG as well as on LinkedIn, which I found to be an amazing work that you are doing. Of course, uh, I feel you have a very unique approach to conflict resolution through
thank you.
your educational approach as well as all of the activism work that you do. Can you tell me a little bit about what inspires you to take this journey?
Okay, thank you for this invitation. What inspires me, maybe will surprise you. What inspires me is the kids, our kids, children, African children, because my father leave me something is about transmission. The fact that what you're doing, you don't have to do it just for you, just for the moment. You have to do it for the next generation, for the future. So that what is inspiring me to do something today that can benefit to other African children tomorrow and next generation. That's what inspires me the most.
I think it's a great approach. You make it a point to make sure that your generation as well as the future generation not only about learn about today's issues, but what Africa was
Yes,
previously.
yes.
Tell me why you make it a point to educate them about the various African kingdoms before Africa became what it is today.
Yeah, it's really important. I'm always telling my kids and all the kids and all the adults that if we want to be a better version of ourselves, we need to know were our ancestors, the civilization, the ancient civilization. How do they function? How do they create things? Because the most of African are today, of today, are doing stuff just based on what Africa was during colonization and slavery. But most of African people don't really get the point that we had another history, another narrative history that we should know to have a better ways to rebuild ourselves. So that's why it is really important to know exactly what our ancestor was doing, what they were, and so on, because that's the foundation, that's the basis. If we want to build something, we have to build it on what our ancestors were, and not what about what European and other people did to African. We need really to get to the start of everything, the beginning of everything, because as I always say in the history lesson I give to people, African civilization is about 72,000 years in the past. 70,000 years in the past, because it's really important. It's a huge gap of many thousand years. So African women and men need to realize that our history is really deep, and we
hmm
that
I
history.
totally agree that Africa's history is deep and it's vast. Um,
Yeah.
but tell me, when you are, going into these different countries across Africa, you're from the DRC, which is riddled with its own problem, with its own internal and external conflict. Um, but your hope is to unite all of Africa through these compelling stories that you tell of historically, factually correct um, um, uh, information about what Africa was before colonization. Can you tell me the reaction of the kids when you are educating them about the various different kingdoms in Africa?
Many kids are surprised because they don't imagine what that Africa was. They don't really imagine at all what that Africa was, because, like I say, colonization have drawn another Africa. So maybe 99% of African are marked by this narrative or our history. So when kids learn about the first calendar, the first geographer, the first mathematics, and so on, they say, "Oh wow, really?" I say, "Yes." It's not just about they told us that we did. I show the proof that we did, and that is really amazing for the kids.
Unfortunately, even Africa's educational content and context is from the European perspective. So it
Mhm.
has omitted a lot of that information out. But why did you think it was very important to take this approach to teach them from the beginning to what it is now and what it could potentially become?
Because any nation, any civilization who need to build something need a start point, and that start point need to be um, close to what you are. I mean, you cannot say I'm a democratic state if you just copy another democratic state. Just like I say, the democracy in US, UK, France, Belgium are not the same, but they're all kind of democracy. So the problem of African, not just about politics, but other things, is just we copy. We only copy stuff from European, Americans, Asian, Chinese, but we don't want to get to the work about what was Africa, because many people don't know that the first human rights was from the Empire of Mali with Sunjata Keita. But most of people, when you say human rights, they imagine, oh, France, French Revolution, and so on. But if you don't know that history of Africa, you will be building something in your mind based of European, of Western experience of history. Africa need to know then our own experience of history to have a better approach of what we were, what we are today, and what we want to be.
And some of your educational approaches, you go into both primary schools, secondary schools, all the way up to universities. And some of the videos that I have watched, they are really empowering. They are really inspirational, and they really do change the perspective of your audience. But it seems like we Africans seem to value an external information than the internal information. Do you feel like your work is really bringing tangible change?
As we say in my language, I got it in French but not in English.
You
We
can
need
say it in
to,
French. We have French audiences; they will understand.
okay, in my language, in Ngala, we say the, the chicken need to eat what can go through his mouth. Many African want to get that big information from the Western country, but they don't want to eat that small part of information from our culture or legend or mythology and so on. But they only want to get our the Hollywood kind, the European kind, or the Western styles. That's huge. It's a huge culture. But our own culture, we don't need. We don't make. Just like we don't want to eat this small part of Africa, small part, small part. We just want to get directly to the big stuff, the Indian stuff, the Chinese stuff, the K-pop stuff, and so on. But we don't put so much interest about what is just next to us.
You spoke to how African countries, and just Africa in general, after colonization and independence, have adapted the copy paste culture. And we see now, 60 years later, 50 years later, 30 years later, the younger the state, the worse the issues are. Um, that copy paste is not always going to work because, as you mentioned, democracy is it's not going to be copy paste. It's going to be relative to the society that is being implemented in. Um, but if African countries can go back to what they used to be before colonization and utilize that society's approach to governance, where do you think Africa would be going today?
We can see in West Africa that many republic in West Africa keep their monarchy or royal institution. So what we need to do is not just to say, oh, we leave republic, we go to royalty. That's not my point. My point is what kind of political institution we had in the past. And when you analyze the old African institution we had in the past, you can find some kind of similarity. I got two examples. The first one is ancient Egypt. In African narrative, we call it Kemet because Kemet was the indigenous name of Africa of Egypt, who means the land of the black, or the black land. You see, that's the first thing. Maybe we should go further. So, in ancient Egypt, Kemet, after the first intermediate period, or the first period of trouble, the king decided we don't need to get only one king, because when one king has 100 kids and when succession time comes, it's always trouble. So the king says, when the first king is on the throne, a second one has to be there. When you put it in our time, it's just like president, vice president. So you
Mm-hmm.
see, they don't invent everything. The other example is from Western Africa and Central Africa. They call it DRC. DRC is a system the same when two kings are on the throne the same time. Because if one is dead because of war or sickness, the second one is there, and nobody will come just like oh, my dad was the king, so it's my turn to be the king. No, it's the second king who became the first king, and so on and so on. So you see, there is a lot of example, political example from ancient Africa that we need to rediscover and to readapt to our time and build our own model of democracy. Because
Absolutely.
when you see just like my country DRC and Belgium, we had copied the style of Belgium of democracy, and it's not matching. You see, African in the Bantu area, people love to be a strong president, a strong leader. Just flirting a little bit with dictatorship, but it's
Well,
another
can you
example
speak
of
a little
reality.
bit to what the DRC could use from its historical African context that would solve the conflict that it is facing today, whether it is from an external force or an internal civil conflict?
I think that the main problem from a country is first internal. People are not united. People are not aware about the origin of the problem and the consequences. People only see the today situation. And if we want to resolve this problem, we need to once again go back in the history and find what was the system, the political system that we had. So that's why one of the answers is maybe a federal state, because we see it with the Congo kingdom and all the kingdom, they were a kind of federal state like the US, the UK. So maybe it could be an answer, but first we need to resolve the actual problem. And there are two problems: the social equity and the economic justice. These are the two problems we need to solve before going to federal state, unite Africa. There are two main problems: social equity and economic justice.
And through your educational approach to doing activism work, you address a lot of both social, economic, as well as just the cultural fabric of how to resolve conflict and build peace through education. Um, and there is a specific program that you speak to, which is called Return to the Land, Return to the Country. Can you tell me why it was so important for you to create specific programs to address not just political unrest or conflict, but the importance of deeply rooted education?
I think that education is the key words. We need to put the focus on education. Education is not just to tell the kids this is what you have to be, this is what you have to do. Education is more deep than that. Education is about to give an information and to explain why this information is important and to let the kids or the adults that they have to use the information to do something, because many people get the information. As you can see, the diaspora is really aware about many things, but how much are doing something with this information? Many of them are just like, I have 200 books, I read everything about Sheikh Anta Diop, about this, about that, but what have you done with all this information? Is just your for your ego, or is something that you receive to give? That's why I told you at the beginning of this show that my father gave me something important. He said, Mommy, the transmission I gave you, and you have to give to the kids, and your kids to the next generation.
So you're paying it forward.
Yes, yes, and that's my passion since 16 years now.
Absolutely. And how important is Pan Africanism in this journey of, just saying, this is the continent that I belong to, and I'm very proud of it. We know from history that every time Pan Africanism is pushed and prioritized and it becomes a continental agenda, suddenly leaders are losing their lives and they're being wiped out. But how important is it in the current environment?
I can compare Pan Africanism to a religion. Like one of my elders says, Pan Africanism is my religion, because as a religion, Pan Africanism can unite all African, Muslim, Christian, and African beliefs, and so on. Pan Africanism is like a religion, and all those people who are dying because of Pan Africanism are our martyrs, our heroes. They are dying for our religion. That's really important. People need to realize it, because the idea of Pan-Africanism came from Africa. It goes to the West Indies, Caribbean, and the US with slavery. And there, some African remind themselves that we are not just slave. We were king, queens, we had empire, kingdom. We need to do something. Then Marcus Garvey came. Then Dessalines, Toussaint Louverture, and so on. So people were based on Pan-Africanism. The revolution in Haiti was about to unite all the tribe there. They don't say, oh no, I'm Ethiopian, oh I'm Congolese, I won't mix with Ethiopian, I won't mix with Senegalese. They say, hey guys, we are all blacks here, we are all slaves here. What is the central point who links us? How deep wish of freedom. So that is the birth of the Haitian Revolution, based on the roots of Pan-Africanism. And in my Bantu area, we have something that we call Ubuntu. Ubuntu, that means I am because we are, the unity. So that idea go to the Caribbean, the US, and then with the anti-colonialism war and independence in Africa, came back in Africa as Pan-Africanism. It's the same path that the rumba, the music, came from Congo, Cuba, and then Africa again.
Well, Momi, I think you're doing an impeccable activism work in utilizing our historical context to build and unite communities across Africa. Uh, I am very, very inspired by the work that you are doing, and I know there are many others that are inspired by the work that you are doing. So thank you so much for joining me, and I will keep an eye on the work that you are going to continue to do.
Thank you. Thank you, Nunu.
You're welcome.